Hey there. So glad we get to spend some time together today. We're going to explore a really fascinating way to think about faith, and we're going to borrow an idea from a place you might not expect, modern science. It's a perspective that might just open up a whole new way of seeing how the unseen becomes real in our lives. So let me start with a question for you. What if the simple act of looking at something, of truly intentionally observing it, could actually change what it is? It sounds kind of wild, right? But it's a real concept from physics that I think has these beautiful echoes in our spiritual lives. All right, so here's our little roadmap for today. We'll start with that strange rule from science, then we'll see how it connects to faith. After that, we'll break down a four-step journey, look at some powerful stories, cover a few really important reminders, and then wrap it all up by seeing what this means for us. Ready? Let's jump in. Okay, first up, we're taking a quick detour into the mind-bending world of quantum physics. Now, don't worry, you don't need to be a scientist for this. We're just borrowing one really cool idea, and it's called the observer effect. So get this, on a super tiny level, a particle isn't in just one place. It exists as this cloud of pure potential. It could be here, or there, or anywhere, all at the same time. But, and here's the crazy part, the very second a scientist observes it or measures it, that whole cloud of possibilities collapses into one single definite reality. The act of looking, of observing, seems to be what makes it real. Wild, right? So what on earth does this have to do with faith? Well, what if we gently borrow this idea as a metaphor? What if faith is its own kind of spiritual observation, a way of connecting the world we can see with the one we can't? Let's explore that. This is where it gets really beautiful. So, in the quantum world, you have that superposition, all the possibilities at once. In the spiritual world, we have God's promises. You can think of them as this whole realm of unseen potential, of blessings and grace just waiting. And our faith, that's our observation. It's the act of focusing on and trusting one of those promises. And when we do that, that unseen potential collapses into something real, something we can actually experience in our lives. And you know, this idea isn't even that new. Listen to this ancient text. It says, faith is the substance of things we hope for. It's the very stuff that makes the unseen real. And it's the evidence, the observation of things we can't yet see with our eyes. It sounds a lot like our model, doesn't it? So how does this journey from an unseen promise to a visible reality actually work? You know, it's not just some vague, wishy-washy hope. We can actually see it as a pretty clear four-step process. So step one, it all starts with the promise. God's grace, his blessings, they already exist as this spiritual potential. Then step two, that's our part, the observation. We use our faith, tuned by what God says, to focus on one specific promise. Step three is the collapse. In that moment of focused trust, the promise becomes a real spiritual substance. And finally, step four is the manifestation. That spiritual reality, in time, becomes a visible, tangible fact in our world. It all starts with what God's already done. I know this can all sound a little bit abstract, so let's ground it. Let's make it real by looking at a couple of incredible stories of people who were amazing observers with their faith. Let's think about that Roman centurion for a minute. His servant was terribly sick, right? But he didn't focus his observation on the sickness he could see. No, his faith observed something else entirely, the healing power that was present just in Jesus' word. He didn't even need to see Jesus come to his house. He just needed to hear the promise. And what happened? The result was incredible. Because he focused his faith on the promise of healing in that word, a totally new reality was established. That unseen potential for healing collapsed into a tangible, real thing, and his servant was healed in that exact moment. But what about the flip side? What happens when our observation is, well, miscalibrated? The story of the 10 spies gives us a really clear and honestly a pretty sad picture. God had promised them this amazing land, but they didn't focus their faith on that promise. Instead, they observed the giants, the huge fortified cities, all the obstacles they could see with their eyes. And because their observation was locked onto the giants, the reality that collapsed for them was one of fear and defeat. The tragic part is, that's the reality they and a whole generation had to live in. 40 years of wandering, kept out of the very promise they were given. It just shows how much it matters where we point our focus. Now, this is a really powerful metaphor, and like any powerful idea, it's so important that we handle it with wisdom and care. So to do that, let's just go over 4 key reminders, kind of like guardrails, to help us hold this concept with humility. Okay, first, remember that faith receives what God has already provided. It doesn't create something out of thin air. Think of it like a pipeline for grace, not the source of the water itself. Second, and this is so important, God is always sovereign. Faith is about partnering with Him, not trying to control Him. Third, just because you're going through a hard time, it doesn't mean your faith has failed. Sometimes those trials are the very things that make our faith stronger. And finally, love is the engine that drives it all. Faith without a heart of love, well, it's just a technique. True faith always works through love. So, let's bring all of this home. We've gone from a tiny particle in a lab all the way to the very heart of faith. What does this all mean for you and me, right here, right now, in our everyday lives? I think it really boils down to this. In any situation we're in, we have a choice of what to observe. We can stare at the challenge, the giants in our lives, the sickness, the fear, and risk collapsing a reality based on that. Or we can choose to tune our faith to what God has said and observe the unseen promise He's given us. Our focus truly does help shape our reality. So I'll just leave you with this gentle thought to carry with you. Right in the middle of whatever you're facing, what is the one unseen promise from God, a promise of peace or strength or hope that you can choose to observe today? Thanks so much for exploring this with me. It was a joy to be with you.